Abandoned as a child, Lauren Bacall struggled her way to the top of Golden Hollywood, but when she became Golden Hollywood's sexiest young breakout star, she quickly abandoned her career and disappeared almost without a trace to become a housewife. Only then to start having an affair with Frank Sinatra. It's a crazy story, but I promise it will become clearer to you as we go along in this video, while we also show you some of her rare photos. Lauren first appeared on our screens in the 1944 classic film To Have and Have Not. She was a brilliant beauty, just 19 years old, with a voice that could soothe the saddest soul, looks that could kill, and stunning eyes that could pierce straight through a man's heart.
This belongs to me and so do my lips. I don't see any difference.
Her first film was supposed to launch her to unimaginable fame and stardom, but what went wrong? Many film critics say it all had to do with her co-star, a name every golden era Hollywood fan will know, Humphrey Bogart. From the very first moment Lauren and Bogart appeared on screen together, the sparks between them were evident. He was an alpha male, both in front of the camera and in his personal life. She was the epitome of a young Hollywood goddess. Everyone immediately fell in love with her low voice and her piercing gaze as she looked up at the camera from below her brow with her head tilted low. Little did anyone know the true story behind her iconic gaze. You see, while on screen she looked the part of a strong and confident Hollywood starlet, the reality was a much sadder story. She was terrified. During filming, her head would shake violently from anxiety and fear. The only way to stop her head from trembling was to tuck her chin tight against her chest, and this meant that she had to awkwardly look up at her co-stars. As she later explained, I realized that one way to hold my trembling head still was to keep it down, chin low, almost to my chest, and eyes up at Bogart. It worked. Lauren and Bogart's iconic whistle scene is cemented in Hollywood as one of the classiest scenes of all time.
You know how to whistle, don't you, Steve? You just put your lips together and blow.
That cat and mouse game we saw them play on screen would soon flow off screen as well. But it wasn't immediate for Lauren. In fact, she did not really like Bogart at first. As she would later reveal, there was no clap of thunder, no lightning bolt. However, their attraction toward each other grew stronger as filming progressed, and finally, Bogart could take it no more. Just 3 weeks into filming, as Lauren was sitting in her dressing room, Bogart came up to her, put his hand under her chin, and kissed her. It sounds like a scene straight from a fairy tale, but in today's world, it would be an outright scandal, and for many reasons. First, she was basically still a teenager, and he was 25 years older than her. More than that, he was a married man. But that did not stop them from starting a fierce and fiery affair. In his own marriage, Bogart was deeply unhappy. At the time, he was married to actress Mayo Methot, and the two had horrible and violent fights. Apparently, Bogart had a permanent carpenter on standby to fix anything that he and his wife would break during their many fights. Mayo also severely struggled with alcohol addiction and mental health, and she would eventually die from complications related to her addiction. She was just 47 when she sadly passed away. During the first year of their passionate affair, Lauren and Bogart had to meet in secret in an effort not to make Mayo even more angry with Bogart than she already was. And of course, Lauren's mother hated the idea of her 19-year-old daughter dating a 44-year-old man, and she desperately wanted to put an end to it. Even worse than her mother's anger was that of her director, Howard Hawks. He was livid when he discovered that Lauren and Bogart were entangled in a secret romance. He was so furious that he threatened to sell her contract. But as it turned out, her director also secretly had a crush on her. Selling her contract could have meant the end of her career, all because of Bogart. But it would not be long before her career really did end because of him. After the massive success of To Have and Have Not, Lauren starred in one more film called Confidential Agent, although this time, the film did not reach the same acclaim as her first one. In May 1945, just 11 days after finalizing his divorce from Mayo, Bogart finally married Lauren. But the marriage proposal did not come without one strict condition. If Lauren wanted to become his wife, she had a tough choice to make, either be a housewife or an actress, but not both. That's right, Bogart forced Lauren to give up her career so that she can stay home and cook and clean and work in the garden and raise a family. He would later brag about his prized wife, saying, "She's my wife, so she stays home and takes care of me." Maybe that's the way you tell the ladies from the broads in this town. In her own turn, Lauren would also share, "When I married Bogey, I agreed to put my career second because he wouldn't marry me otherwise. He'd had 3 failed marriages to actresses, and he was not about to have a 4th. However, he did allow her to star in 3 more films with him as her lead man. First was The Big Sleep in 1946, and then Dark Passage and Key Largo in the next 2 years that followed. All 3 films were huge successes, so much so that a song would later be named after one of the movies. In 1982, Bertie Higgins released his famous song, Key Largo, featuring the lyrics, "We had it all, just like Bogey and Bacall." With Lauren being faithful to her husband's wishes, she focused on her role as a wife and soon as a mother. In 1946, they welcomed their first child together, a son named Stephen Humphrey Bogart. And if the name sounds familiar, it's because his parents named him after Bogart's character in the first film he and Lauren starred in together. At the time, Lauren was just 24, and 3 years later in 1952, they welcomed their second child, Leslie Bogart. Even though she had all but disappeared from the silver screen, she recalls that time in her life as one of the happiest, being a caring mother and loving wife. As she later said, "Whenever I think of the word happy now, I think of then." Lauren did appear in several films over the next few years, but nothing of the likes as her previous roles that had made her an overnight sensation. Her attention was on family life, which could not be more perfect, or at least, so she thought. But in 1956, tragedy struck, and it struck hard. Bogart was diagnosed with a devastating cancer, and it was as serious as it can get. Lauren took care of him as best she could, at times even sleeping beside him in his hospital bed, but his illness was too severe. Just a few months after the horrific diagnosis, Bogart passed away at age 57. During his last months, Bogart was often visited by his close friend Frank Sinatra. In that time, Frank and Lauren also grew closer and closer. While they probably never had a physical affair, the attraction between them was clear, as one biography revealed. "Everybody knew about them. We just hoped Bogey wouldn't find out. That would have been more killing than throat cancer." It wasn't at all long after Bogart's death that Frank and Lauren made their affair public. They were seen everywhere together. The romance was a passionate one, and Lauren was head over heels. Frank even proposed to Lauren barely 1 year after her husband had passed away, but it was not meant to be. When newspapers got wind of the news, it turned into a firestorm of a media frenzy, and Frank was furious. Just there and then, he decided the wedding was off, and he dumped poor Lauren in the most awful way. Speaking of his engagement to Lauren, Frank simply denied it, saying, "Marriage? What for? Just so I'd have to go home earlier every night? Nuts." Later, he would tell his first wife, Ava Gardner, "Jesus, I was never going to marry that pushy female." A few years later in 1961, Lauren found new love when she married actor Jason Robards. That same year, they welcomed their first and only child together, Sam Robards, who would also follow in his parents' footsteps to become an actor. Lauren was madly in love with Jason, sharing in an interview, "Oh yes, ask me about Jason. I was crazy about Jason." But again, it was not a love that was meant to last. The couple divorced in 1969, and she would never remarry again. Lauren Bacall appeared in many film and stage productions after her marriage to Bogart had ended, but none had brought her the acclaim that her first films did. Many critics think she traded her career as an actress for a career as a housewife, and maybe if she had never married Bogart, she would have been one of the biggest names in show business today. Growing up, Lauren knew she wanted to be a star. She was born to Jewish immigrants on September 16, 1924 in New York, but her name wasn't always Lauren. She was born as Betty Joan Persky. Her father abandoned her and her mother when she was just 6 years old, and her mother took back her maiden name of Bacall and added one extra L at the end. Now, she was Betty Bacall. In her teenage years, she would skip school to go to the movies, where she first realized she wanted to become an actress. Even while still in high school, she attended acting classes in pursuit of her dream. And after graduating, she joined the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, but just for 1 year until she could no longer afford the fees. She would do anything for an income to support her acting dream, including some modeling work, and as an usher on Broadway. Her modeling work finally landed her on the cover of Harper's Bazaar, where she was spotted by Slim Hawkes, the wife of famous Hollywood producer Howard Hawks. Slim begged her husband to give the young Betty a shot, and that's how she landed her role in her first film with Bogart. She was told to change her name to hide her Jewish heritage and to lower her voice. And so, Lauren Bacall was born. The rest, as they say, is history. Lauren Bacall passed away in 2014 from a stroke at the age of 89. But what would her life have been like if she hadn't married Humphrey Bogart? Would she have become one of the most famous actresses ever? Or did she make the right choice to sacrifice her career for love and a family? We would love to hear what you think. If you enjoyed this video, there's a good chance you'll also enjoy the one showing on your screen right now. Click, enjoy, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you on the next one.